former Doctor Who script editors Eric Saward and Christopher H. Bidmead, both in the same featurette on this wonderful new Doctor Who Blu-ray box set, both throwing catty remarks at each other. Will either of them take responsibility for the hiatus between seasons 22 and 23?
The show was in such good condition, but apparently under you it got to a state where Michael Grade just was fed up and pulled it. What had you done?
Let's have a look. Hello there, you impulsive panda. I'm Jason Arnott, the author of The Last Days of Jack Sparks, new novel Ghoster out this month, and some Doctor Who stuff. If you're new to this channel, then you might want to hit subscribe, because I do quack about Doctor Who rather a lot, along with a lot of other retro style stuff such as old video games, horror movies on VHS and the like. Now, I've got hold of this Doctor Who Season 23 Blu-ray box set. I'll be doing an unboxing video with this as well. And of course, being a writer, I'm particularly excited by this featurette, The Writer's Room. Now, this featurette has been on a lot of the Blu-ray releases in this range. The Writer's Room featurette sadly can't be on every single one of these box sets because, very sadly, obviously, not all of the writers are still with us when you're talking about a series like a Jon Pertwee season, for instance. Most of the writers who worked on this Trial of a Time Lord season are no longer with us, but this Writer's Room does something different because it looks at the season 23 we might have had the hiatus not happened, because after season 22 went out, the script editor Eric Saward started to plan season 23, as you would. And he had all these new serials lined up, such as The Nightmare Fair, Mission to Magnus, The Hollows of Time, and several more. But it wasn't to be, because the BBC called a halt on the show that would only be resolved 18 months later, and then they had to wipe the slate clean and create something brand new, which turned out to be this epic Trial of a Time Lord series instead. And so all of the writers who'd been commissioned to write for season 23, the original missing version of season 23 as we now call it, they're the ones who gather in this pub, as is the Writer's Room tradition on these Blu-ray box sets, to talk about, in this case, the season that might have been. Keep watching till the very end of this video, because at the very end I'm going to show you what I consider to be the funniest and cattiest moment in the whole featurette. But let's go right back to the start first, because I'd like to show you how Bidmead reacts when he sees Saward upon entering the pub. I think that Bidmead's utterance is quite amusing, and it's exactly the kind of thing you'd expect him to say. Let's have a look.
Chris! Eric Saward, as I live and breathe.
As I live and breathe. Yes, marvellous. Isn't that marvellous? Joining Bidmead and Saward down the pub are Wally K. Daly, who was scheduled to write The Ultimate Evil, or rather he did write it, but it was never made, and Philip Martin, who had previously written Vengeance on Varos for the show and wrote this script for season 23 called Mission to Magnus, which featured ice warriors. One of the lovely things about this featurette actually is that it creates visuals for the missing serials. So we get to see a few glimpses of what an Auton story set in Singapore might have looked like, and what the Ice Warrior story Mission to Magnus might have looked like, which I find particularly exciting. Anyway, as I said at the start, Saward and Bidmead have a bit of a go at each other in this. Both men are very, very deadpan, especially Saward, and so it's hard to tell exactly how genuinely cutting they're being with each other, or whether they actually know each other quite well and are actually having a laugh. Yeah, quite hard to tell, but either way, it's very, very funny. So let's take a look at some clips. We're going to take a look at the start of the featurette, in which they start off by talking about the hiatus and the reason for it. And as you saw at the start there's a particularly funny moment. I'll shut up and show you a few minutes now.
When I left the show, Eric, you remember those happy days. The show was in such good condition, but apparently, under you, it got to a state where Michael Grade just was fed up and pulled it. What had you done? What had you done to that show?
I'd set out a scheme to destroy the world, and along the way, the BBC.
So that was your plan, was it? Your master plan?
I turned up at the BBC after you'd gone, and I then took a year or two to pull it round a bit to where I wanted it to go.
This looks familiar.
We were beginning to get together a good team of writers. We were getting round to being quite good, but those with the power said no. Grade didn't like it. He didn't like the show. He didn't like the show at all. He thought it was too violent, too unpleasant, too disgusting, too well written.
Too well written.
And he wanted to take the money from Doctor Who and put it into EastEnders. That was being developed at the time, but we were certainly cancelled.
It wasn't because what we'd written was total rubbish.
Well, they said that it wasn't so much rubbish as that it was too violent. And I'm a bit responsible for that because I encouraged people to do it. So it was my fault, and I was very much upset. But the person who was upset most of all, of course, was John Nathan Turner, and that's the only time I've ever seen him cry.
Really, he cried?
Yeah, he was really, really upset. It was his baby, you see. And they'd just been snatched from him. It was really sad.
It was such a stupid decision because Doctor Who was a free show. The money they made abroad was coming back.
My theory was, without any solid proof at all, was that they just ran their finger down the cost of production.
Came across the figure that sort of matched EastEnders.
And said, "Oh, who's that? Oh, Doctor Who, gone." And it was all rather daft.
Because it leaves you in a sort of limbo that you want to see your show on the air, and then there's a sort of odd feeling of disengagement with the process, really.
We did books and we did audio adventures and what have you.
But you'll never see it on screen.
And that's the sad thing, you will never see these stories on screen.
It is interesting there that Saward does seem to shoulder quite a lot of the blame for the Doctor Who hiatus. And it's quite sad for me, to be honest, to see him feeling apparently quite sorry that he made Doctor Who so violent. I mean, personally, I love that whole era of the show because it did go bang out of order. And I always love it when Doctor Who goes bang out of order, but I guess it probably did have an effect on the ratings and the BBC's view of the show. Still, I love Saward, so I won't hear a word against him. The man wrote Earthshock, and therefore he is a major deity in my view. And from there, they go on to talk about each serial that would have comprised season 23, and they go through them one by one, talking about them in detail. And interestingly, there's a couple of moments where they're critical of each other's stories.
I have to confess that I lost my way several times in your story.
I don't know why they would do that, because you think politeness would dictate otherwise. I don't know, maybe it's the fact they're all having a drink. But it's marvellous to see. As I promised, I want to show you what I consider to be the funniest and catchiest moment of the whole featurette. So let's take a look.
Our last story today is one written by you.
What's it called?
Hollows of Time.
Ah, yes. That. Actually, I wanted to call it In the Hollows of Time, which I would have thought somehow... What do you think? Is that a better title, In the Hollows of Time?
No, it's Lumpen.
No?
Lumpen.
You think so?
Yes.
Oh, what a shame. But, OK, so the story.
Lumpen. You see what I mean about how it's impossible to tell whether they're genuinely having a go at each other or not? I still have literally no idea. Is Eric Saward simply the kind of man who makes no bones about calling something lumpen if it's lumpen? I don't know. Do they like each other? We may never know. We may never know. Down there in the video description, I'm going to put a link so that you can pick this up if you haven't already. I'm also going to put a link down there to my free mailing list for readers and writers alike. And when you sign up for this fortnightly mailing list from me, you get a free book written by me as well. So that's a bonus, isn't it? Go and have a look. Now, comments. What I'd like to hear from you is which version of season 23 would you have preferred? Are you glad that Trial of a Time Lord eventually prevailed and the original season 23 was scrapped? Or do you think, given what you've heard about the missing season 23 serials, that you would have preferred season 23 as Eric Saward and his writers had originally intended? Get down there in comments and tell me which version of season 23 was the right one to be aired. Looking forward to having a chat with you. Thank you so much for watching. Have a beautiful day, and don't forget to embrace your obsession.
So is there something here that's always here?